Hi, it's Martin from Martin's Engine Services. Today in the workshop I've got a 2003 Nissan Micra 1.4 automatic, which has covered 167,157 miles. It belongs to one of my long-term customers, and they've had this vehicle for many years now, and it's been an absolutely brilliant little car. Unfortunately, it's possible that it may have come to its end with a transmission or transmission related problem. It would be a real shame if this has happened to this car, as it's been a brilliant little machine. So it's been all over France, it's been all over Europe, up the Alps and whatnot, and does the school run. It used to do school run rather, and it does the usual shop runs and all the rest of it. And it's probably been about sort of 95% reliable over the time I've known it and the time they've had it. It'd be a real shame if this actually gives up, because it's actually been a great little car, and I'm still attached to the little thing. It's had so few repairs in its life. I think it had a spring and a ball joint and a bit of brake work, but other than that, just basically it's all original. It's hardly ever let her down. An exceptionally great little machine. The problem it's got at the moment relates to the gearbox, and only just reared its head yesterday, completely out of the blue with no warning. She was driving up the motorway when it suddenly decided that it wasn't going to upshift when she wanted to accelerate past a slower vehicle. It got there, of course, eventually, but it was basically stuck in a high gear. It then jumped up and down between the gears a few times, so she pulled off the motorway, and as she said, when she was slowing down, it did a bit of a weird sort of judder to, not a judder, but sort of like a surging to a halt, a bit like a very severely warped set of brakes, but that doesn't seem to be a problem with it. It then proceeded to be a bit weird on the upshifts and downshifts until she parked it up, and I don't know, other issues. It just did it, and that was it. So no loss of drive or anything of that nature. So she called the recovery and had it sent here for me to have a little look at, just in the off chance we can find something wrong with it. I plugged it in, and this is where the fun starts. There's no actual fault codes in the transmission. However, you get into the transmission and it'll say no fault codes, but it won't let you access the module. I've tried it with ignition off, I've tried it with the engine off, engine running, no, won't let me in. I've tried it on my other scan tool, and that does exactly the same, so it will not let me into it in any circumstances. I checked the network, and that's alive. All the other modules are clean and green, and there's no report of any network errors, or no one's telling on anybody. I thought the engine ECU may have something to say about it, but nope, all is happy. The engine itself runs absolutely fantastically. It's a brilliant little unit. Uses a little bit of oil, but she's up there on the miles, and it performs remarkably well, and it's got some very impressive acceleration, really. When it's driving along normally, it drives brilliantly. Transmission shifts nicely, it's a nice smooth ride, very responsive, but then the trouble starts. I've been through all the usual bits and pieces, checked all the fuses, although there's not a lot on this vehicle. One particular area of problems on these older Micras is you've got 4 bus fuses here made into this unit on the back of the battery, and they do tend to corrode and fall apart. In fact, one of those I've actually repaired. I took that unit, I've had a look at it, it's all clean, I've checked the connections there, no problem. Tried obviously battery disconnect, all the rest of it, but no response from the engine gearbox controller. The other interesting thing to note is that the overdrive button on the gear shift doesn't illuminate the overdrive off function on the dashboard. Although the overdrive off light does work, because when you turn on the ignition, the instrument cluster goes through a self-test and it does illuminate the overdrive off warning light. So that's a point of interest. However, the transmission is definitely working on the overdrive, as it does shift into the higher gear at higher speed and out of it without any problem. So that's an interesting one. So I've got a suspicious feeling that although the computer's working, it's basically working independently and has gone offline or partially offline, which is where the problem lies. I was contemplating the idea of maybe grabbing a £50 unit off eBay and trying it. But I don't quite know where the customer wants to go with this, say, because she's up there in the old mileage now, excuse me, and it's one of those do you do anything or don't you? I'm going to spend a couple more hours, I suppose, a couple more minutes having a look around, just on the off chance I can find something for them, or just some answer at least, because I hate it when you get to this situation with a trusty little car like this that's got some attachment all round, just suddenly gives up and potentially end up getting scrapped. I mean, it's generally in exceptionally good condition. It's had a couple of little bumps along the way, a little bang on the front right bumper where someone reversed into it, the usual bits and pieces, but it's still holding up, pretty impressive considering all odds. It's just one of those ones where you just want to know what the answer is, whether it's there or, whether it's something you can solve or something you can't solve. It just niggles me with something like this. The only other thing that did happen about 3 months ago while they were on holiday in France was that the alternator actually expired. It's had I think it's a genuine Nissan replacement unit actually, so I do remember saying it was horrifically expensive, but you're stuck in the middle of nowhere. And since then, I've had no problem with any problem with that battery going flat, but the battery light does flash on the dash now and again. You get the odd little flicker just on and off. Now when it does that, you don't lose any charging, still charges under load, there's no voltage spikes or anything horrible, so it appears to be working fine. Now I did notice obviously that the poly loom has come away here, but there are no rubbed wires anywhere. I've been over this loom very carefully, there's no rubbing, no chafing, nothing at all there. All the earths are good, all that sort of thing is absolutely fine. So I don't suspect there's any problem there. I'm kind of contemplating whether or not there is a wire rubbed through in the harness somewhere, which is flicking the battery light and possibly playing the transmission up. Because it did happen yesterday on the girl, she was a lady, she was saying that when the transmission really went into it, the battery light was flashing on and off quite quickly. Now I've had the same thing occur to me today once. I got the gearbox warm right up, it was shifting fine, and the battery light flashed really quickly, and the transmission played up. But the transmission had played up before and after the battery light, and has played up without the battery light flickering. So whether they're related, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm a bit reluctant to start pulling the wiring loom to pieces and trying to find out what's going on. I mean, as you can imagine, the wiring is getting a little bit old, and a little bit crispy, and start disturbing some of this, you could be into the old can of worms scenario. So I will have a little pee around it, a little play with it. I've got it here for a while, well, it ain't going anywhere. I like to keep coming back to it now and again, to see if I can find anything. I know it's an old girl now, but it's always a shame when these sort of things come to the end. If anybody's got any ideas or any thoughts or any suggestions, I really would like to hear about them. So if you're ping us off a message, I'd be much appreciated. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye for now.